Just when you think you've got this whole ADHD thing figured out, bam, you're back in the thick of it. Strategies that used to work in the past simply stop working, and you think to yourself that maybe this time you really have gone crazy. Welcome to Perimenopause. Before we get started on why perimenopause has such a big effect on ADHD, let's just define it in the first place. Simply put, perimenopause is the hormonal shift that precedes menopause. It signifies the end of a woman's fertility. It can start as early as your mid-30s and last for up to 10 years, although the average is only 4. The difference between the two has very little to do with symptoms. Perimenopause turns into menopause once you've gone without your period for a full year. That means that if you go 11 months without one and then you get it, you're still in perimenopause. Even if your symptoms are out of control, if you still get a period, you're still in perimenopause. Which is important to know because a lot of doctors won't treat your symptoms even though the symptoms are exactly the same minus a period. Okay, so now we know what perimenopause is. What does it have to do with ADHD? So let's talk symptoms. Hot flashes and night sweats are classics. Urinary urgency is common too. You may need to pee more frequently or experience incontinence. Oh joy. A decrease in the hormone estrogen can cause joint and muscle pain because estrogen is involved in the reduction of inflammation. Also, your joints actually have estrogen receptors on them. So as your estrogen decreases, your joints are less protected from wear and tear. Headaches, migraines, and dizziness are all potential symptoms due to a variety of reasons, as is weight gain due to the changes in our metabolic rate. Estrogen helps regulate your energy, your glucose levels, and your fat distribution, so you're more likely to gain weight around your belly. A change in our sexual desire is normal, and this can go for better or worse. Vaginal dryness is also an issue, so get yourself some lube. Perimenopause affects our sleep too, which exacerbates our issues with concentration and memory, not to mention anxiety and depression. And lastly, mood swings and emotional dysregulation. Fun fact, estrogen is the female hormone and it fluctuates throughout our menstrual cycle. When we're on our periods and we feel that irrational anger, that's because of a decrease in our estrogen, which means that when we feel this way, we are actually at our most masculine, not our most feminine. So that's the list of perimenopause symptoms. So now let's compare that with our ADHD symptoms. Urinary urgency, check. Although for ADHDers, this is usually a sign of us hyper-focusing until we're ready to burst. Joint and muscle pain, check. There's a strong connection between ADHDers and hypermobility or excessive flexibility. This can lead to injuries, dislocations, and tendinitis. Headaches, another check. Mental fatigue caused by the extrasensory input we experience often leads to headaches. A study from 2017 of over 5,000 kids with ADHD found that the severity of their ADHD symptoms directly correlated with the frequency of their migraines, and it is not the only study. There's a link between ADHD and eating disorders, especially binge eating disorder due to our impulsivity, so you can check weight gain off on that list too. Next, sexual desire. ADHDers have a very complicated relationship with sex. It can give us a dopamine boost, but we can also lose interest mid-session and our minds can wander off. I'm planning an entire video on ADHD and sex, so make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss it. Next, sleep struggles. And check. ADHD is associated with a completely different circadian rhythm. We often experience something called delayed sleep phase syndrome, and we tend to need more sleep than our neurotypical peers. And then there's concentration, memory, and emotional dysregulation. The only symptoms of perimenopause that ADHD does not share are hot flashes, night sweats, and vaginal dryness. So now that we've got that sorted out, do I even need to explain why perimenopause makes ADHD so much worse? It's the same damn complaints. And because women are so often not believed by the medical community, a lot of us don't even get diagnosed with ADHD until we're in perimenopause. It's next to impossible to separate one set of symptoms from the other, and neither perimenopause nor ADHD have a definitive test. The only test that I could find online is something called the FSH test. This stands for follicle stimulation hormone. This is a hormone in the brain that regulates the release of an egg. So when the levels are high, that's an indication that you are reaching menopause. But like I said, it's not definitive, so it might not be worth the effort. If you're over 40, experiencing symptoms, and have an irregular period, then chances are you're in perimenopause. So now what? Do you get a diagnosis and just go home to cope? Well, kinda. There are hormone therapies, and even a low-dose birth control can help. These aren't often offered until you're in full menopause or until your symptoms are completely unbearable, because there is an increased risk of stroke, heart attack, and other circulation issues. Mostly, doctors just recommend treating symptoms individually. Gabapentin is a seizure medication, for instance, and it can help with hot flashes. There are medications for overactive bladders, creams for vaginal dryness, and plenty of supplements that you can get over the counter. Black cohosh is probably the most studied. A decrease in estrogen, although normal, comes with its own set of risks. Estrogen plays an important role in bone density, so it increases the risk of fractures and osteoporosis. It can also lead to heart disease and other cardiovascular issues because estrogen promotes good cholesterol and keeps blood vessels healthy. Estrogen stimulates the use of magnesium in the body and regulates vitamin A for good skin and hair follicle health. Making sure you're eating a healthy diet full of fruits and vegetables and getting a good multivitamin designed for perimenopause can really help you deal with the changes in your body. Eating a plant-based diet can really help. And this doesn't mean that you have to go vegan. You just have to focus on the fruits and vegetables instead of the meat and carbs. Obviously, exercise is highly recommended, but as we get older, the focus needs to go away from cardio and more into strength building. This is especially important when we don't have the estrogen to protect those muscles and joints. Reducing your stress levels can really help, especially with mood swings, as can getting enough sleep or just rest if sleep evades you. And of course, meditation and breath work are also really beneficial. Drinking and smoking less can also be very helpful, but it gets complicated when you use a glass of wine or a smoke to de-stress at the end of the night. So you'll have to decide if that's right for you. For ADHDers, it's important to note that estrogen affects our dopamine and serotonin levels. You may have already noticed that your ADHD is affected by your menstrual cycle, so you can imagine how an irregular period can affect it and how much harder it's going to get to predict your moods. Lower estrogen means lower dopamine, so expect a reduction in your executive function. Be preemptive about it, create reminders, and for the love of God, stop relying on your memory. It's gonna let you down every single time. Also, just try to be as open and honest with your loved ones as you can be. Asking for help can make a big difference in your ability to cope, because lower estrogen also means lower serotonin, and the overwhelm you experience can lead to depression and anxiety. Shame and ADHD can seem like they're intrinsically linked, but being open and honest about your struggles reduces that shame. Brené Brown, an expert on shame, says that the only way to dissolve shame is to talk about it, and I encourage you to do so. Remember, neither ADHD or perimenopause is in your head. It's absolutely real, so give yourself grace. Thank you for watching. I'm Kristen. This is Creatively Divergent. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Bye. We are actually at our most masculine, not our most feminine, which probably explains why most men are little bitches. Just reporting the facts.